caught the front door being jostled from the outside. Then a pause, and suddenly the door opened. Emily stepped in first, then froze. The house wasn't theirs. No bags in the hallway, no furniture, no smell of dinner waiting. Just emptiness and a white envelope fluttering from where she'd pulled it off the door. She opened it. The silence on the feed was deafening. Scott read over her shoulder. His face, always composed, performative, cracked. Jaw-tight nostrils flared. Emily's hands shook. She read the letter again and again. Then she sat down on the bare floor and began to cry. Not quietly. Scott paced behind her, muttering curses, running his hand through his hair like a man who just realized the poker hand he was bluffing had already been folded on. "He sold it," Emily finally said. "He sold the house?" "Yeah, no kidding. And he kept it all of it." Scott turned on her like a switchblade. "This is your fault. You said he trusted you. You said he was too soft to notice. You said we should do it," she yelled. "You said we couldn't wait any longer. You called him a burden. You said to strike while he still trusted us. I watched them unravel two people who thought they had the future in their grip, only to discover they'd never even held the pen." In the feed, Emily dropped her head into her hands. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a failure of a father. I felt like a man who had finally drawn the line. I closed the app. Not out of malice, not even satisfaction, just closure. The image of my daughter crouched on the floor, tears streaking her cheeks that would stay with me longer than I cared to admit. I hadn't raised her to be that person, but I had somehow. And there was no undoing it now. I set the phone down on the nightstand beside Margaret's photo and whispered, "It's done." And I meant it. I didn't check the camera feed again. I deleted the app, then powered off the phone for the night. That Friday evening, I made myself a sandwich, poured a glass of cold milk, and ate in silence. Not the heavy silence of a house too full of memory, but a clean, uncluttered quiet. The kind that makes space for something new. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. Sunlight poured through the window above the sink in a wide stripe, landing on the laminate floor of my little kitchen. I stretched, cracked my knuckles, and pulled on a soft flannel shirt. It was still cool in the morning. Spring in Boise took its time. Downstairs, I walked the short block to Brews and Views, the coffee shop I'd passed every day since moving in but hadn't yet entered. The bell over the door jingled as I stepped in, and the smell of roasted beans and fresh cinnamon filled the air. The place was cozy, warm light brick walls, a chalkboard menu. A young woman behind the counter with purple streaks in her hair and a bright smile greeted me like she'd seen me before. "You're new," she said. "I never forget a face." "Walter," I said. "Just moved in down the street." "Welcome to the neighborhood, Walter. I'm Sarah." She glanced at my flannel. "Let me guess. Black coffee, no cream, no sugar?" I raised an eyebrow. "Lucky guess," she grinned. "Retired engineers always order like that. My grandpa was one." I chuckled. "Close enough." She poured a tall cup and handed it over. First one's on the house. I took a seat near the window, watching the quiet street wake up. Across the way, someone walked a dachshund in a tiny sweater. A couple strolled by holding hands. The local paper sat on the corner of the table, real ink, real pages. I felt the weight of everything I wasn't carrying anymore. No house, no debt, no guilt. Just me, a warm drink in a town that didn't know my story and didn't need to. A few minutes later, a voice spoke beside me. "Mind if I join you?" I looked up to see a woman in her late 60s, gray hair pulled back neatly. A gentle way of standing, not tentative, but careful. Her eyes were kind. Familiar. "Joanne, the apartment manager." "Of course," I said. She sat across from me with a steaming mug and a blueberry scone. "You look different today." "Do I lighter?" she said, like someone who finally put something heavy down. I didn't reply right away. Just took another sip and let that sit between us like truth. "You were right," I finally said. "About what? This place. It's a good place for fresh starts." Joanne smiled. "Most people think they need big changes to feel better. But sometimes all you need is a small table, a hot drink, and no one expecting anything from you." We talked for a while. Nothing heavy, weather plants, favorite diners. But her presence was easy. No judgment, no pretense. When I walked back home an hour later, the breeze was soft and cool. The daffodils in the garden outside Sunset Vista were almost in full bloom. I paused to touch one. It bent slightly under my hand, then sprang back. Stubborn little things. Like me. Inside, I took off my coat, opened a fresh notebook, and wrote March 30th, 2019. First Saturday, I've woken up not thinking about what I've lost, only what's ahead. I closed the cover, and for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like an old man trying to hold on. I felt like a man starting over on purpose. It was Jonah who first knocked on my door. A Saturday afternoon in April, one of those days when the sun feels like a reward and not a warning. I was halfway through reorganizing the kitchen cabinets when I heard the knock. Not loud, not urgent, just hopeful. I opened the door and found a young man standing there, maybe 20, with a clipboard in one hand and a stack of flyers in the other. "Hey there," he said. "Sorry to bother you. I'm with the community events team. We're doing a garden cleanup tomorrow. And thought maybe you'd like to join." He spoke quickly, like someone used to hearing no thanks before he could finish the pitch. I raised an eyebrow. "Garden cleanup, yeah. Just a few hours. Mostly weeding, mulching, maybe planting some herbs for the kitchen staff. There's lunch after. Nothing fancy, but Millie's donates cookies." That made me smile. "I don't know," I said. "My knees might file a formal complaint." He laughed. "Fair enough. But even just sitting in the shade and handing out water would help. Honestly, half the folks just come to talk. That part got me." "I'll think about it," I said. He nodded and handed me a flyer. "I'm Jonah, by the way. I live across the courtyard, apartment 204. My grandma used to live here before she passed. I help out when I can." He turned to go, then paused. "You look like someone who knows their way around a toolbox." I gave him a look. "That a compliment or an insult?" He grinned. "Compliment. We've got a loose cabinet door in the rec room that's been annoying everyone for a week. I can't get the hinge to stay put. If you're ever bored, I'll swing by after lunch," I said before I could talk myself out of it. Jonah thanked me and jogged down the walkway. And just like that, something shifted. The rec room smelled like carpet cleaner and dusty board games. Jonah was already there when I arrived, kneeling by the kitchenette cabinet, a Phillips head screwdriver in one hand and a puzzled expression on his face. Guessing duct tape isn't the answer, he asked. "Only if you want it to fall off again in 2 days." He scooted back and let me take over. I examined the hinge, tapped on the wood, made a few adjustments, and tightened things up. Jonah watched carefully. Not impatient, not hovering, just watching like someone who actually wanted to learn. "You were good at this," he said. "What did you do before?" Retirement custom builds. Residential, mostly smaller homes." He nodded. "I can tell. That was clean work." We sat down afterward, me on the edge of the foosball table, him on a folding chair with his sneakers kicked off. "Can I ask you something?" he said, suddenly quieter. "Go ahead." "What's the hardest part about getting older that caught me off guard?" I took a breath. Honestly, feeling invisible. Like people walk past you instead of toward you. Like your years of experience somehow count for less than a few minutes on someone else's phone screen. Jonah nodded slowly. My dad used to say stuff like that. He died when I was 12. Heart attack, out of nowhere. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. He was a mechanic. Not much for talking, but he taught me how to change oil before I could drive. Taught me how to listen. To machines. To people. He looked over at me. You remind me of him. I felt something tighten in my throat. Unexpected. Sharp. No one said that to me in a long time, I said. Well, Jonah shrugged. I figure people like you, the kind that fix things quiet, you don't always get told how much that matters. We sat in silence a while. Not awkward. Just enough. Before I left, Jonah said, You ever want to teach someone how to build something again? I'm a quick learner, and I listen. I looked him in the eye and saw no angle, no pretense. Just a young man looking for steady hands in an uncertain world. And I thought, maybe you weren't invisible, just waiting to be seen by the right eyes. It started with a broken bench, one of those community benches in the Sunset Vista courtyard. Gray-painted wood slats, rusted bolts, one leg wobbling like a drunk in Sunday shoes. Most folks just avoided it, sat on the stone wall nearby. No one said anything. But Jonah did. He knocked on my door early Tuesday morning, holding a toolbox bigger than he knew what to do with. You busy? He asked. Depends, I said, raising an eyebrow. What's broken? He grinned. The bench. Thought we could fix it. Together. There was something in the way he said we that pulled me off my chair before I even grabbed my hat. The bench had been there longer than either of us. The wood was dry and cracked, one end sagging from years of weather and weight. I knelt down, knocked gently on the slats. Rot, I muttered. Dry as old bones. We'll need replacements. Yeah, cedar would be best. Won't warp. Jonah jotted notes in a pocket notebook. What about the screws? Replace them. Stainless steel 1.5 inches. He nodded like a soldier taking orders. I could tell he liked structure, the clarity of steps, the comfort of knowing what came next. Something most kids these days weren't used to. We spent the morning measuring, removing old bolts, and sanding the rust off the frame. He asked questions, smart ones. How do you know when the wood's too far gone? What makes cedar better? Why don't we use nails instead of screws? I answered each one with the kind of calm I used to reserve for apprentices on job sites. Not rushed, not impatient, just honest. That afternoon we drove to a small lumber yard on the edge of town. The guy at the counter recognized me from years ago. Walter Pierce, he squinted. Built that Craftsman place on River Birch Road. That's me, I said. He smiled. Heard it sold. Place held up nice. Jonah looked at me sideways as we loaded the planks into his truck. River Birch Road. That was you, long time ago, I said, tightening the tailgate strap. Before the world decided I was too old to swing a hammer. Jonah didn't respond, but the way he looked at me like I was more than just someone waiting out the years said plenty. We rebuilt the bench in 2 afternoons, treated the cedar, sanded it smooth, fitted it snug. We even carved a small plaque just below the seat, built by WP&J. P&JR. April 2019. Nothing flashy, just initials, but it felt right. After we were done, Jonah sat beside me wiping sawdust from his hands. This was good, he said. Feels like something real. It is, I replied, because we made it with care. That still counts. He looked out across the courtyard. A few of the residents were walking laps, some with canes, others just holding hands. Life moved slower here, but it still moved. You know, Jonah said most guys my age don't get to do this. Build something with someone who actually knows what they're doing. You're not like most guys your age. He chuckled. You sound like my grandma. She must have been smart. She was, he said